how did you think about building the brand at Segment? And like, what does that work actually look like? Are you, creating a bunch of internal positioning documents and then going to run and make commercials? Like, what is that? Can you kind of take us behind the scenes of that?
Yeah, yeah. I think in the earliest days, it really helped to like kind of get an almost like an establishing shot. So an establishing shot in like movie lingo is that first 30 seconds of a film that you're watching where you're supposed to be able to tell where you are based on what you see. Right, so the establishing shot of Manhattan is like classics, like looking down, you see Central Park, you see the tall buildings. Establishing shot of San Francisco is usually, but not always, the Golden Gate Bridge. Despite like whatever part of the Bay Area the film is actually shot in, first thing you see is the Golden Gate Bridge. You're like, oh, I'm in the Bay Area. So if you could have an establishing shot for your brand at the very beginning, that really helps. There's some understanding of what if I showed you this, you would be like, yeah, 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 this feels right. This feels right. And what I mean by that is I think it took those first set of videos, uh, the picking, first of all, you pick a script and you do it with your founders. Like you pitch them a series of ideas, they only like a few. And then you narrow down to what feels right when we talk about segment, what feels right when we think about you're going to see this on a screen. It's going to be the first representation of a story that we're telling that is like an analog to real life that makes sense to you, and the styling of it is specific, and the words that we use that's setting a tone, and we have to be completely in alignment that we love this, that we're proud of this. And if you get that right, you can actually just see, you could just basically see the line that comes out and all of the branching paths that the marketing campaigns of the future take, but you can trace them all back to that like establishing shot. For example, at Segment, our first video was what is segment? And if you search that, it's still live. My girl with the red hair, she's an engineer. Her name is Cassie. We named her. She's the actor in the video, and she is sitting inside of a really rad helmet making company. And I use the word rad specifically because she says, I work at a rad helmet making, oh, I make rad helmets. We make rad helmets. Like, customer can design their own helmets. And like the whole thing was fun and interesting and quirky. We made a whole bunch of the production company made these like ridiculously cool helmets that were just like, a motorcycle hipsters, dream, which are the spikes and the hair and the polka dots and whatever. And we built all of that so that we can put them all in the establishing shot for the video. She says the word rad a couple times. We explain what segment does. She's still a software engineer. She's still in her element. She's still taking time to explain somewhat realistically, but the concept of what segment is. But we've set the establishing shot. The reason the video is still live 6 years later, 7 years later, is because it turned out to be evergreen. You don't always go into like brand building with the idea that your work's going to be evergreen. But if it works, it works. It's like this magical moment where all the stars have aligned. And so I think if you can get an establishing shot that you're very proud of, like within the company, all of the most important stakeholders, the founders, the people who are building it from the ground up, they feel proud of that work. You're just going to see it. It's just going to you're going to keep building off of that, as opposed to they're not proud of it. So you actually see it changing quite often, which means there's no consistency, which means there's very little recall, right? And like that's when you're not doing a great job building that brand.
And so you have this establishing shot that sort of sets the tone for the brand, but then the product and everything evolves, right? The market's
Yeah,
evolving, your
yeah.
competition's evolving, you're adding a bunch of new products into the suite. Like, how did you think about sort of evolving Segment's brand over time? And maybe what did it look like 5, 6 years later? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to some extent, it really becomes higher and higher production value. And to some extent, you also just expand the places where you are building a brand. So where, the style of our video production didn't really change. What we did do is add in a whole bunch of different channels over 5.5 years that I was there, where we were establishing our brand, right? So in the beginning, it was just with some videos, and then it was we put on a user conference, And the first year, and it had its own brand. It was called Synapse. And the first year there was 400 people. The second year there was 800 people. The third year there was like closer to 2,000 people. And you are building the Synapse brand in parallel with Segment. Then you do billboards, you do out of home. Even your billboards change in style. And then maybe the culmination is like a three-dimensional, like physical board with props on it that's in the Bay Area. If anybody listening is in the Bay Area, off the 80 East going towards Bay Bridge, it's still up.
It's a great
And so
billboard.
I think
I
you
know that one well.
expand.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. But it makes me really proud every time I drive past it.